Welcome to Rica Subtest 1 online test preparation course presented by ricatest.com. Thank you so much for joining us. In this lesson, you will learn everything you need to know about Competency 3, which covers phonological and phonemic awareness. If you're ready, let's begin. Phonological awareness is the knowledge that oral English is composed of smaller units. And it's accomplished when a child can identify the individual sounds in a word, such as fun has f and and n. Likewise, if the child can manipulate the individual sounds of a word, such as transforming the word fun into sun, this demonstrates that the student is phonologically aware. Phonemic awareness, on the other hand, is the ability to separate sounds called phonemes in a word. This is accomplished when the student can identify rhyming words, such as clock and sock, as well as showing the ability to identify the number of sounds in a word. For example, clock has 4 sounds, and sock has 3 sounds. Now, let's look at the relationship between phonological and phonemic awareness. As you can see, phonological awareness is viewed as the umbrella term. Phonological awareness is like the category name. Phonemic awareness is the subcategory term that sits within phonological awareness and alongside other key terms that we will cover in later lessons. Looking back to the definitions of these key terms, we notice that both definitions represent the sounds of a language. This means that phonological awareness and phonemic awareness can both be done in the dark, meaning if you worked in a dark room, you closed your eyes, you could only listen, you can still complete phonological and phonemic awareness tasks because these terms are all about the sounds of a language. Test tip. Phonemic awareness is often taught with a puppet. So if you see a puppet in your question on the Rica test, think phonemic awareness. A phoneme is a speech sound in a language. Here we see the word phone in the word phoneme. So we think sound. Each sound in a word represents a different meaning. And this is important because if you use the word phone, for example, and for no reason we just change the initial sound from f to b, well, we change the meaning of the word altogether. A grapheme is an English letter that represents a phoneme. Using the same two examples from above, we can see their graphemes are phone and bone. This also shows us that some graphemes represent one letter, such as in b, as in bone, whereas other graphemes represent more than one letter, such as the ph in phone. Next, we have vowels. Vowels include the English letters A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y and W. We also have long vowels, which say their name when you say the word. For example, make and sight. Make, sight, make and sight. Short vowel examples include dog and rot. Notice the O in each letter makes a sound, but it doesn't make the O sound. It doesn't say O. An R-controlled vowel is neither long nor short, but instead, the vowel is influenced by the R in the word. Examples include bar and bird. An onset is the initial phonological unit of any word. For example, the C in cat. The rhyme is the string of letters that follow that word. For example, the AT in cat, at. For your Rica test, you need to know that building phonological and phonemic awareness skills are crucial components for the reading development of our students because written words connect to spoken words. It is phonological and phonemic awareness that allows a reader to produce the correct sounds to letters and letters to sounds. Acquiring phonological and phonemic awareness supports students' reading growth in achieving word recognition, vocabulary, comprehension, and ultimately at the top of the reader's ladder, reading automaticity. In this section, you will learn to describe instructional strategies for teaching phonological and phonemic awareness. While taking your Rica test, you will be presented with questions that address a student's reading need, and it will be your job on test day to both identify the correct instructional strategy to help meet the student's needs and to demonstrate your understanding, your knowledge regarding the benefit of using that instructional strategy. In these upcoming slides, we will present you with the common reading issues that you can expect to see on your Rica exam, as well as the instructional strategy to be used and the benefit of using this strategy. This next section is highly important for your essay sections. This example student is having a difficult time identifying how many words are in a sentence. Now, when a student is having a difficult time identifying how many words are in a sentence, a teacher should work to strengthen the student's word awareness skills. Now, instruction will look like this. The teacher uses several index cards, each having one word written on it. The teacher creates two-word sentences like Jack walks. The teacher and the student read the sentence together. Jack walks. Then the teacher asks the student how many words are in the sentence. If the student correctly answers two, then the teacher builds off the first sentence and adds a word to create a three-word sentence. For example, Jack walks fast. This pattern can continue with more words and more challenging words to accommodate students' needs. Building word awareness skills helps children identify word boundaries and thereby helps them understand how many words are within a sentence. Let's look at another example. This student is having a difficult time identifying the syllables in a word. For this need, the teacher will want to build the student's syllable awareness. The instructional method to be used is that we teach children to say the multisyllabic word and clap their hands when they say it. An example could be baseball. Building syllable awareness helps children identify the syllables of a word. In this example, the student is having difficulty with compound words. For this reading need, the teacher will use word blending instruction. The teacher here will use pictures of the two parts of the compound word. For example, foot and ball. The teacher prompts the student by saying, "This is a picture of a foot and this is a picture of a ball. What do you get when you put them together?" The student says, "Football." Word blending instruction helps children see compound words visually. In this example, this student is having a challenging time reading multisyllabic words. In this case, the teacher will work on syllable blending with the student. The instructional method to teach syllable blending is when the teacher prompts the student by saying something like, "What word do we get if we put bro and there together?" And in this case, the student should reply, "Brother." Syllable blending helps students put multisyllabic words together. Now, in this example, this student is struggling to identify the sounds, syllables, and words in speech. When a student is struggling to identify the sounds, syllables, and words in speech, a teacher uses onset and rhyme blending. The teacher says the onset, for example, buh, and the rhyme, ank. And the student is tasked to say the word they make, which is bank. Onset and rhyme blending help students identify the parts of speech. As a teacher, it is important to understand that all students come into each grade at different reading levels and experiences with learning to read. For some students, picking up phonemic awareness can be a major challenge. While taking your Rica test, remember that phonological awareness lessons should be taught prior to phonemic awareness lessons. In this next section, we will transition from phonological awareness to phonemic awareness instruction. Let's begin. This example student is having a difficult time identifying the sounds at the beginning, middle, or end of a word. In this situation, the teacher will build the student's sound isolation skills. which is the ability to identify the beginning, middle, or end sounds of a word. To build sound isolation skills, the teacher picks a list of words with a common element that the student has shown a need to improve, such as words with the long A sound. The teacher models the correct pronunciation of the word and says the sound of the problem element. Now, the student pronounces the word and then gives the beginning, middle, or end, whichever the lesson is focused on. Quick note here to make this lesson more challenging. For example, if you receive a question on your Rica test regarding the reading need for an advanced learner, this teacher can ask the student to read the word instead of being told the word. Sound isolation helps students break up sounds of a word. This example student is having difficulty identifying the same sounds that multiple words have in common. For this reading need, the teacher will build the student's sound identification skills. Sound identity is the ability to identify one sound that multiple words have in common. The instructional strategy starts as the teacher says the focus word kite, write, sight, and then asks the student, which sound do all of these words have in common? And the student will say the sound that's in common, I. Building sound identity helps students identify same sounds in multiple words. In this example, this student is having a difficult time reading multisyllabic words. For example, rabbit, mitten, and muffin. For this reading need, the teacher will build the student's sound blending skills, which is the ability to blend individual sounds together to form a word. The instructional strategy used to build sound blending skills happens when the teacher says sounds of words with brief pauses between each sound, such as k, a, t. Then the teacher says, which word am I thinking of? And the student should say, cat. Sound blending helps students blend sounds together to correctly pronounce words. In this example, the student is struggling to read words from a list that shares a common phonics pattern. For this reading need, the teacher will build the student's sound substitution skills, which is the ability to substitute one sound of a word with another sound to create a new word. The teacher starts by saying cat and asks the student, can you change the k to a b? And the student says bat. Sound substitution helps students build word sounds using root words that they already know. In this example, the student is experiencing the same struggle as in the previous example, which is reading words from a list that share a common phonics pattern. However, here we can see the example word is different. In this case, we're going to use sound deletion, which you'll also want to use on your Rica test if you notice the words used have blends in them clock, block, shock. Sound deletion is the ability to delete a sound from a word to create a new word. And this is when the teacher asks the student to take away the first letter of a word and say what the new word makes. Block becomes lock. Sound deletion helps students build word sounds using root words that include blends. In this example, this student is having a difficult time isolating and identifying the sounds in a spoken word. This example is the most important phonemic awareness building instructional strategy that you will absolutely need to know for your Rica test. For this reading need, the teacher will use sound segmentation, which is the ability to isolate and identify the sounds in a word. This is where the teacher gathers a list of words with only two sounds, and the teacher models the desired behavior by saying, I am going to say a word and then say the sounds in a word. Pa, p, ah. Can you say the two sounds in the next word? Ma, And the child should say, mm, ah. Once the child can complete this task with two sound words, the teacher stretches further and tries three sound words. For example, cat. Sound segmentation helps students segment new words. Sound segmentation is the most difficult of the phonemic awareness tasks for the students to complete. It is also the assessment that teachers begin with while assessing students' phonemic awareness skills, exactly because it is the most challenging for the student. This means that if a student can successfully complete sound segmentation, they can complete all of the other phonemic and phonological tasks. However, if a student struggles with sound segmentation, the teacher should go back to another activity. For example, sound deletion or sound substitution or sound blending. Children must demonstrate an understanding of phonemic awareness, which are the sounds in a word, before they can be expected to demonstrate an understanding of phonics, which is the relationship between written letters and their sounds. There are three main groups of readers that the Rica test will focus on, and these include struggling readers, English learners, and advanced learners. We'll begin by looking more closely at meeting the needs for our struggling readers. We can differentiate instruction to meet the needs of struggling readers by doing the following: providing small group or individualized one to one lessons while working to build their word blending or word segmenting skills. You can also reteach the skills that have already been taught. If you choose this method, you will not want to tell the Rica test score that you will simply teach the lesson by saying the same things in the same way. You're going to want to explain how you will change the pace of instruction, add kinesthetic or tactile exercises to find a method that works best for this individual student. Another option is to use multimedia, which might include using an iPad, showing printed pictures, or providing the child with a headset to listen to a pre recorded read aloud. Lastly, find ways to provide the student with more practice based on the individual student's needs. Next, let's have a look at ways to differentiate instruction for our English learners. One common method is to find and use similarities between the student's first language and the English language. Not all languages are easily transferred from the student's L1 or first language to English, and languages that do naturally transfer, such as Spanish, will still find troublesome areas in a particular part of the language that has a disconnect from English. Take a quick note here that although finding similarities in the student's first language, it's not always an easily transferable area. Even if the student's first language is one that does have many transfer points to English, like Spanish, you're going to still expect to find times where the transfer point doesn't so well naturally connect. So be careful of that and know that you'll probably need to spend more time teaching those skills to that learner. Now we will move on to our advanced learners. Ways we can differentiate instruction to meet their needs is that we can increase the pace of instruction and we can find ways to add activities that extend onto their current skills and knowledge. Phonological and phonemic awareness involve the sound of a language, and therefore their assessments do not include and do not involve print. The framework for these assessments is that the teacher will model an activity or a learning strategy, the student will observe the teacher, the student will complete a task independently, and then the teacher will provide feedback. So you're going to want to keep this model in mind as this has a 1, 2, 3, 4 cycle. Teacher models, student observes, student completes the task individually, and that's when the teacher uses this individual task to assess the understanding for the standard being taught, where then the teacher will provide feedback. And this cycle will be used again and again in this Rica test course, and this is what you're going to want to use for your Rica test. The most common phonemic awareness test is called the Yolp-Singer test, and this is when the teacher conducts an assessment using sound segmentation with the student. So let me be clear here. Yolp-Singer test is the same assessment as sound segmentation which we discussed a few slides back. Assessment through the Yolp-Singer test happens when the teacher gathers 22 words and says each word, for example, cat, and the student segments the sounds of the word to k, a, and t. The three levels of assessments are first, entry level assessments, second, progress monitoring assessments, and third, summative assessments. Entry level assessments are used to determine a child's level before a lesson or unit. Progress monitoring assessments are given during the lesson or in the middle of a unit. This allows teachers to understand which students need more help with the topics that have already been taught and also show the whole class profile and how the whole class is doing, whether the entire class has learned the material or if the skills need to be retaught to everyone. At the end of a lesson or a larger unit, a teacher will provide a summative assessment. This is a formal assessment, and it also tells the teacher which benchmark each student is currently placed at, whether that means the student has not met a standard, has met the standard, or is exceeding the understanding for that standard. Before we leave this lesson, let's recap the key learnings and key points that we learned today. First, we learned that phonological and phonemic awareness play a vital role in children's reading development because these are the foundational skills for children to understand sound to symbol relationships in English. Next, we learned that phonological awareness is the knowledge that oral language is composed of smaller units, such as spoken words and syllables, whereas phonemic awareness is the specific type of phonological awareness involving the ability to distinguish these separate phonemes in a spoken word. Then we learned that there are multiple ways to teach phonological awareness using the direct and explicit instructional strategy and methods. These include word awareness, syllable awareness, word blending, syllable blending, and onset and rhyme blending. Then we learned that there are also multiple ways to teach phonemic awareness, where we again use direct and explicit instructional methods, which include sound isolation, sound identity, sound blending, sound substitution, sound deletion, and sound segmentation. Remember that sound segmentation is the most linguistically challenging for our students, but also the most informative for the teacher to assess a student's phonemic awareness level. And that's why they begin with the Yolp-Singer test, which again is sound segmentation. Then we learned that children must demonstrate an understanding of phonemic awareness before they can be expected to demonstrate an understanding of phonics, which is why this lesson comes before the phonics lesson. Next, we learned that teachers meet the needs of struggling learners by providing small group lessons to reteach skills that are lacking using fun, new, and engaging methods to provide more opportunities for these students to practice skills based on their needs. For our English learners, try to find connections from their first language to English. And for our advanced learners, we can provide more challenging projects and extend their current set of skills and knowledge. And lastly, we learned that the three types of assessments include entry level, which is used at the beginning of a lesson to check the student's current understanding of a topic that will be taught. Then there's monitoring of progress assessment, which is used in the middle of a lesson to check if students are comprehending and catching on to the topic that is currently being taught. And then there is the summative assessment, which is a formal assessment, and this is used at the end of a lesson or a unit to determine which individual students have met the standards being assessed. Thanks so much for joining us in this Rica Test lesson. When you're ready, take the Competency 3 quiz to check your understanding of the test material, and we look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.